So for the sake of those who may listen online, I'll just read the translation again. This is Canto 4, Chapter 3, Text 1. Maitreya continued, "In this manner, the tension between the father-in-law and son-in-law, Daksha and Lord Shiva, continued for a considerably long period." Purport. The previous chapter has already explained that Vidura questioned the sage Maitreya as to the cause of the misunderstanding between Lord Shiva and Daksha. Another question is why the strife between Daksha and his son-in-law caused Sati to destroy her body. The chief reason for Sati's giving up her body was that her father, Daksha, began another sacrificial performance, to which Lord Shiva was not invited at all. Generally, when any sacrifice is performed, although each and every sacrifice is intended to pacify the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, all the demigods, especially Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, and the other principal demigods, such as Indra and Chandra, are invited and they take part. It is said that unless all the demigods are present, no sacrifice is complete. But in the tension between the father-in-law and son-in-law, Daksha began another yajna performance, to which Lord Shiva was not invited. Daksha was the chief progenitor employed by Lord Brahma, and he was a son of Lord Brahma, so he had a high position and was also very proud. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And the continuation of this very instructive pastime between Daksha and Lord Shiva. So, as we have heard in the previous chapter, originally there were some underlying ill feelings from Daksha towards Lord Shiva that erupted when Lord Shiva did not stand up and welcome him in the sacrifice. And after very harsh words by Daksha towards Lord Shiva, to which Lord Shiva was very tolerant. He sat, he tolerated, he did not respond. He then left the arena of sacrifice, Shiva. Shiva left the arena of sacrifice. And yet Lord Shiva's followers were very upset and there was cursing and counter-cursing going on between the followers of Lord Shiva and the followers of Daksha. That sacrifice has concluded and now Daksha is planning another sacrifice. This is his role, this is his job, it's what he does. As a progenitor, they perform many sacrifices. And so Daksha is arranging for another sacrifice, and this time he is not inviting Lord Shiva at all. And as we hear Srila Prabhupada explaining, he's a principal demigod. We understand the position of Lord Shiva. And the reason why Daksha is not inviting him is because of these ill feelings, because of Daksha's pride, because he's carrying this, and as we hear in this verse, for a considerably long period. This tension, vidvishator, the tension is continued to bear. Yes. So we probably have had experience with this ourselves sometimes. You know, if there's difficulty between persons and there's just this underlying tension, it continues, we can carry that for a considerably long period, and this is what's happening between Daksha and Shiva. Although both Daksha and Shiva are extraordinary personalities, even Daksha is. He's, as we hear, he's the son of Lord Brahma, he's the chief progenitor, he has a very important position, and yet that position has caused pride. And as we hear in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear these beautiful prayers by Lord Brahma. You know, when there's this wonderful chapter, Lord Brahma's prayers for creative energy, when Lord Brahma is praying to the Lord, please, despite my, in spite of this service that you've given me, which is an amazing service, which is so intensive, creation, the creation of the material world. Please do not allow me to become proud. That's Lord Brahma's prayer. And that is an essential prayer for any devotee, yes, for any service that we may have, for any position that we may obtain by Krishna's mercy, that actually that mood, that prayer needs to constantly be there. Please don't allow me to become proud. Because there's that old saying, pride comes before the fall. And we see that illustrated again and again through the Shastra. And that's what we're seeing here happening with Daksha. Pride in his position. And what did that pride cause him to do? Blaspheme an exalted person. And this blasphemy of a devotee, or this neglect, now it's turning into neglect. As he didn't invite Shiva at all. He's just pushing Lord Shiva out of the picture due to this pride, due to these ill feelings. And this neglecting of devotees, or harbouring ill feelings towards devotees, this is extremely damaging to our own spiritual life and to the whole society of devotees. When there are these underlying tensions or things that we really hold on to in the heart, and then it turns into neglect. We may not invite certain people to certain events, or we can just see what's happening here. And the Shastra gives us these wonderful pastimes that illustrate these points. What for? It's not just a nice story for us to listen to, but it's something for us to take into our heart and to take instruction from, and to think, how can we avoid these sorts of situations, and how can we deal with these sorts of situations properly? Because a properly situated devotee can deal with the problems that arise. Because we have all of the solutions to all of our problems are there in our process of devotional service. We just need to be able to tap into that. And one of the primary ways that we can avoid this neglect going on between devotees, or harbouring ill feelings between devotees, is by practicing the loving exchanges that Rupa Goswami gives us in the Nectar of Instruction. And if those loving exchanges, those 6 loving exchanges, are basic parts of our everyday life, and not just with a select few people, but we try and practice that amongst the whole community of devotees, yes, that we offer prasadam, we receive prasadam, we give gifts, we accept gifts. There's also a very important side of it, that we're ready to accept when devotees try to offer things. Not in a proud manner, but in a way of accepting that exchange. An exchange is always going 2 ways. And that we're able to reveal the mind in confidence and inquire confidentially from others about the process of devotional service. And when we're engaging in those loving exchanges, then we are protected from this tendency, or this flaw, this thing that might come up, that we'll neglect others, or that we may treat them rudely or harbour ill feelings. If we're actively trying to engage in loving exchanges, even if there's something there, what can we do, We can serve that person, we can go and give them some prasadam, we can say some sweet words. Everybody has wonderful qualities, And in that way, these exchanges, they protect us, they keep us safe from this really dangerous situation of neglecting devotees, or beginning to harbour ill feelings, These sorts of things can, as we see with Daksha and Shiva, it can continue for a considerable time. It can just burble there in the heart. And then we have the previous situation, what happened when, as soon as there's some perceived offence, like Daksha just thought that Lord Shiva was being offensive because he didn't stand up, when he actually wasn't. He was fine to do that. But because Daksha was holding these feelings of, didn't really want to give my daughter to him, I don't really respect his position, he was holding that in his heart. So then what happened at this perceived offence, it all came spilling out, in such harsh ways. harsh language can drive people away. And this harsh behavior by Daksha actually causes his dear daughter, his pet daughter, his youngest daughter, to die right in front of him. She did that right in front of him, and he was aloof. How is that possible? How is that possible? We see this like intense example, but this is what can happen, with this harboring of ill feelings, neglect of the devotees, and then our whole behavior can become so harsh, And as we hear, as we know, Krishna sits within the heart of every living entity. And I've heard so many times, we need to make our heart a nice place for Krishna to sit. Yeah? Krishna wants to sit in the pure, soft, comfortable place, We see pictures of Krishna, he stands on lotus flowers. It's soft, it's beautiful, it's fragrant. It's not this hard heart filled with ill feelings towards others. It's not a comfortable place for Krishna to sit. So that's our responsibility, working on the heart, and that's what the whole process of devotional service does. And these loving exchanges, if we can practice those, they are a wonderful way of keeping us safe. Not only just keeping us safe from offense, but actually increasing the depth of relationship between devotees, which is very, very satisfying. That's a very satisfying thing to the heart. When we have these wonderful exchanges between devotees, it makes our whole community very vibrant, the whole society very vibrant. And another point I wanted to make about this pride of Daksha is that one way I was thinking, just as the loving exchanges can protect us from neglecting devotees or harboring ill feelings between devotees, a very primary way that we're protected from pride is to always be situated in this proper conception of ourselves as Krishna's servant. Yes, das, dasa, anudas. Lord Chaitanya says this, who am I? I'm not a Brahmana, I'm not a Kshatriya, I'm not a Vaishya, I'm not a Shudra, I'm not a Brahmachari, I'm not a Grihastha, I'm not any of these things. What am I? Gopi Bhartu Padakamalayur Dasa Dasa Anudasa. I'm simply the servant of the servant of the servant of the lotus feet of the eternally self-manifesting ocean of nectar of the highest bliss, the master of the gopis, Lord Shri Krishna. That's our position. And when we're situated in that position, even if it's just like, as I really appreciate so many aspects about deity worship, but this is one of them, these wonderful verses that we recite before going on the altar, before performing puja, that gets us into that consciousness that I am the servant. Yes, and that I'm simply the servant of the servant of the servant of my spiritual master, who is then going on and serving in this way. So if daily we're reciting things like this and getting ourselves in that mood, in that consciousness that I am the servant, where's the place for pride? I'm simply the servant of everyone else. I'm the servant of the Lord, I'm the servant of the Vaishnavas. And we see this mood of servitude is something that brings so much joy. So remembering how in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, he always treated Advaita Acharya as his senior, because Advaita Acharya is the godbrother of his own spiritual master, of Ishvara Puri. Advaita Acharya is also a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. And he is very much senior in age to Lord Chaitanya. So Lord Chaitanya always treats Advaita Acharya as his superior. He always treats Advaita Acharya as his superior. And Advaita Acharya, he just wants to be treated as a servant. I don't want all this respect from the Lord. He understands Lord Chaitanya's position. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and yet he's giving me so much respect. It's making Advaita Acharya feel very poorly, He wants to be treated as a servant. So much so that Advaita Acharya actually he manufactures the whole situation so that Lord Chaitanya would chastise him and treat him as a subordinate. Advaita Acharya starts to preach some impersonal philosophy, And then Lord Chaitanya becomes very angry and he chastises Advaita. But what does Advaita Acharya begin to do? He dances. He's, yes, and he starts dancing and chanting and going around saying, I am the servant of Lord Chaitanya, I am the servant of the servant of the servant of Lord Chaitanya. He treated me like his servant, he chastised me. This is his joy. That's the joy of Advaita Acharya. You know, this is the joy of our whole parampara, is that we're simply the servant of the servant of the servant. And when we are situated like that, there's no room for pride. Because we see everyone else, very easy, we call everyone Prabhu, but what does it mean? It means you're my master. That means I'm your servant. I'm simply here to serve you. I'm lower, you know. So then we're in our proper position of servitude, then this pride doesn't have space to flourish in the heart. As we see from Daksha, you know, he had a very important position, and yet that position caused pride. So that was his downfall, because he expected this respect from Lord Shiva and he perceived it in such a way that he didn't receive that respect. Then all of this, the exhibition of his pride, just has caused this whole situation. So that's the result of pride. It's the result of neglecting the devotees. We're about to see this horrific result that plays out in the next few chapters. So in thinking about this, I was just thinking of these two aspects. You know, if we practice the loving exchanges, we're protected from neglecting the devotees, and if we practice trying to really understand and see ourselves as a servant, then we're protected from pride. And maybe someone else would like to add some more, make some comments, share some realizations, ask a question. Yeah? That's okay. I didn't see any. Okay, we go.
Devotee care is like how they're doing spiritual. Like they not corrected, but kind of like having someone that can kind of check on them because they're like way up high as a leader. And it's sometimes hard to accept other people like try to know if you're okay spiritually, on track. And if you feel like, oh, what was this person did, then usually that is before a fall down. Okay. And it's just because they're very concerned about if the leader is good.
Yeah, it is an interesting point. Yeah, it's an interesting point, and that's such an important reason why we need friends in devotional life, friends and seniors, peers, you know, and that we amongst our friends and we're not shy to say, well, how's your chanting going? You know, how are you reading? Like that we can ask each other about our sadhana. You know, no one's above that. No one's above that, you know, we need that. Like, I know personally for myself, I really like it if someone asks me how I'm going, you know, how's your chanting going? It just feels like care, you know, it doesn't, you know, not in such a way of like, have you been doing this? But, you know, in a caring mood, then that just opens up, again, it's a loving exchange, you know, it opens up intimacy, it opens up another level of relationship. And no one's above that. Like, I've been, you know, recently I've been, because I really respect His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj, I'm sure everybody in this entire world does, and, you know, I've been seeing the things that he puts on his app, and recently, or maybe a little while ago, he actually put on, he said, I don't often say this, but every day I chant my 3 Gayatris, morning, noon and night. So just so all of you know that, I do that every day. And I thought, like, how nice is that, you know? Like, he he's the spiritual master of so many thousands of people, and yet he's showing, he's expressing, he's making sure people know that he's performing his daily sadhana. In the midst of health crisis and so many things, he performs his daily sadhana and he tells people that. It's so nice, you know. So yeah, nobody's above nobody's above that care. It's not even really correction, is it? Like, it's care. Yeah.
Another point I was thinking of when you said about loving exchanges, I mean, Mother Ursula says that we're not all going to be best friends, you know. So there's some people that we, you know, have similar natures and we get along, and some that maybe we're very different. But at the same time, that happens in the spiritual world. The difference is that there's no malice. So I don't think, with some people, I don't have such a relationship. I'm not going to. I could actually, but it's just kind of weird. But at least like to respect and not have malice in my heart.
Yes.
Okay, let's go outside.
Thank you. Yeah, it's true. I mean, we read that in Nectar of Instruction when it speaks about the different levels of devotees, you know, Kanishta, Majjhima, and Uttama Adhikari. And even though there is that process given to discriminate between different levels of devotees, we can discriminate in a very respectful way. You know, if the basic mood is always one of respect, then, you know, protected, you know. And she's right, you know, we're not all going to be best friends and, you know, taking a pie around to everyone's house, but still if that mood of respect is underlying there, then so, Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.